checklist for bipolar disorder from DSM-4. Criteria for manic episode: a distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive or irritable mood lasting at least 1 week. Inflated self-esteem and grandiosity. Decreased need for sleep, e.g. feels rested after only 3 hours of sleep. More talkative than usual or pressure to keep talking. Excessive involvement in pleasurable activities that have a high potential for painful consequences, e.g. engaging in unrestrained buying sprees, sexual indiscretions or foolish business investments. With melancholic features, loss of pleasure in all or almost all activities, lack of reactivity to usually pleasurable stimuli, does not feel much better even temporarily when something good happens. Excessive or inappropriate guilt. Problems include school truancy, school failure, occupational failure, divorce or episodic antisocial behaviour. Were there any proposals for mental disorders you rejected? I asked Spitzer. He thought for a moment. Yes, he finally said. I do remember one. Atypical child syndrome. There was a short silence. Atypical child syndrome, I said. Robert Spitzer replied, the problem was when we tried to find out how to characterise it. I said, what are the symptoms? The man proposing it replied, that's hard to say because the children are very atypical. He paused. And we were going to include masochistic personality disorder, but there were a bunch of feminists who were violently opposed. Why? They thought it was labelling the victim, he said. What happened to it? I asked. We changed the name to self-defeating personality disorder and put it in the appendix, he said. I'd always wondered why there had been no mention of psychopaths in the DSM. It turned out, Spitzer told me, that there had indeed been a backstage schism between Bob Hare and a sociologist named Lee Robbins. She believed clinicians couldn't reliably measure personality traits like empathy. She proposed dropping them from the DSM checklist and only going for overt symptoms. Bob vehemently disagreed. The DSM committee sided with Lee Robbins, and psychopathy was abandoned for antisocial personality disorder. Robert Hare is probably quite annoyed with us, Spitzer said. I think so, I said. I think he feels you plagiarised his criteria without crediting him. I later heard that Bob Hare might get his credit after all. A member of the DSM-5 steering committee, David Schaffer, told me that they were thinking of changing the name of antisocial personality disorder. It sounds so damning, and someone suggested calling it Hare syndrome. They're mulling it. In 1980, after 6 years inside Columbia, Spitzer felt ready to publish. At first he wanted to road test his new checklists, and there were a lot. DSM-1 had been a 65-page booklet. DSM-2 was a little longer, 134 pages. But DSM-3, Spitzer's DSM, was coming in at 494 pages. He turned the checklists into interview questionnaires and sent researchers out into America to ask hundreds of thousands of people at random how they felt. It turned out that almost all of them felt terrible. And, according to the new checklists, more than 50% of them were suffering from a mental disorder. DSM-3 was a sensation. Along with its revised edition, it sold more than 1 million copies. Sales